to just kick us off around like who you are, what you do, just for people who don't know who you are, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. Okay. So, uh, Chris Birtle. I'm the one of the directors at Capio Recruitment. My role is sort of more aligned to a head of people. So I oversee essentially three core areas, which is learning and development, talent acquisition, and HR. The role is a little bit more all encompassing, just because the context of our business at the moment. So I tend to actually also still get involved in aspects of sales management, marketing. I help oversee and the tech side of it, making sure our tech supplies all working, the systems we utilize. So it is quite ops and all encompassing. But I guess my large part of my background is more L&D than anything, and really looking at the organisational structure and processes and making sure that they're fit for purpose in order to be able to scale.
Yeah, good stuff. So for those, because it is an area which I think is misunderstood. So could you just explain your role and what that actually means, and what actually goes into that, like in terms of like a learning development manager and director?
More so the L&D, from the L&D side, as opposed to
Well,
the TA and HR stuff.
Yeah, I think because I certainly did. I certainly misunderstood what actually goes into it and what the role actually entails.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you could just give an overview of like what your day to day looks like and what that role
Yeah.
actually is, but also I suppose the value it provides to companies.
Yeah. I have great sympathy for a lot of people who work in L&D, particularly in recruitment, because it gets perceived as one thing that you're constantly you're almost fighting against it to one degree, because most people see it as training, right? You think L&D, I've got an issue, my guys are struggling, can you go and train this person? And that is a bit of a battle, but it's just so much more. There's just so much more to L&D than that side, because training is one mechanism. So in order to achieve a problem. Learning is more about actually deciding how we're going to get the individual to learn the skill sets to overcome the problem that they're encountering. And that quite often isn't training. You know, it's not that. It might be coaching. It might be pairing them up with a mentor. Is it will? Is it skill? What are the reasons why it's not happening? It could just be a simple system error. Like it's more about actually understanding the nuances and in the context of the issue. Like, what's the problem? And then trying to work out what is the best solution that we can have to help the person learn the skills that they need to in order to succeed. You may and that's the thing. The L&D person may not be. They might not be the right person to deliver that training anyway, because. For example, you've got learning and development people in recruitment businesses, and this is myself as well, right? There's people in our organisation that are better at the job than me, that have more current and relevant experience on the tools doing what they're doing. So I can give people, don't get me wrong, I've worked in recruitment for 15 years and helped and developed a number of people who are very, very good at the job. So I've seen a lot of things that I can hopefully pass on. But equally, it's a long time since I was actively on the tools and whatnot. So actually, think of yourself as almost like a broker of knowledge, like a broker of learning that sits inside the organisation to actually
That's
say,
an interesting way to
let's
let's
understand the challenges that you've got. Like, actually try to diagnose the issue, much like what a recruiter does, right? And then think, okay, based on the challenges that I've got. And this is where I think understanding culture, like understanding your business culture, is a really important part of it, because and the key people inside it and things like that. And then go, right, well, based on the issues, who would be the best person to help deliver this? What would be the most appropriate solution? Have we got any e-learning solutions that might just support with it, and then we can back that up with some coaching? Is it just a 4 to 6 week coaching program that we can run one-to-one with the person? Can I pair them up with a mentor? Who is the best person? And it's not just training. Like when a recruiter when someone comes to you and says, "Oh, my guys are struggling, can you help train them?" The first question you should ask is, "Well, what have you done? What have you done so far to try to resolve the issue yourself?" "Well, I haven't done anything." Well, they might. You might be the best person to resolve this, not me. So there is that battle. I think from a learning and development manager perspective, as opposed to just someone who's like more L&D like a consultant sort of thing, is I think you need. I think I sort of look at it as if I was removed from the business, it should still all happen. What are the systems and what have we set up that would allow someone else to pick this up and run with it if I wasn't here? And I guess that feeds into trying to establish and build a learning culture. So, you know, from our side, we've got an induction that I've built the induction for someone who's coming into recruitment. There's 4 phases to it. Based around phase 1, let's teach them how to find candidates and qualify candidates. And then we've got like online assessments at the end of each one, just to try to embed, help embed the learning. Phase 2, let's get them actually doing, they're also doing the job as well alongside this. So they'll be maybe resourcing on other people's jobs and getting active feedback by working alongside another consultant. Phase 2, how do we manage the candidate and the client through the recruitment process? Phase 3, how do we qualify jobs and negotiate terms of business? More account management, 270 kind of stuff. And then the last bit, then we go on to new business development. But I'm still I am delivering too many of the modules at the moment, but that's something that we will be doing next year. So actually, like, the training isn't just delivered all by me, because I get bored. Like, listening to just 39-year-old bloke bang on, like, it's better off coming from actually different people who can deliver, their own spin on it, their own stories, anecdotes, situations that they've had that are a lot more current than mine. So and then that should in effect run by itself. Like, we do an L&D drop-in, monthly L&D drop-in. So it's just a session that it can be unstructured. It could be, come along, let's just talk, bit of call it action learning. Like, let's actually just talk about some of the issues that you've got and see if we can almost discuss between us what are different people doing that would help overcome that. Or someone can pick a topic that they want to run, and we just rotate that round. I've only delivered one this year on objection handling, and we've done 7 of them. So I don't need to run that, but it's the system. It's just the system that's in place to then help facilitate more learning. What else have we done? Yeah, like I mentioned to you, so one of the big things that we have built, and I think this is really, really important, particularly in recruitment, and this really helps, I think, as well, sell from a talent acquisition perspective, and it's part of our employee value proposition. Is that we don't promote based on just on billings. There's far more to it. So we have quite a robust, like, career development framework, and we call it a RAMP. Just really basic. It stands for Recruitment and Management Progression. I thought it sounds good because it's like a ramp, right? Yeah. But it outlines the financial goals, because of course it's a sales role, so there are some financial goals. There is a culture code score, which is determined by, there are 8 behaviours that we have which underpin each of our 4 values. So two behaviours per value, basically. And that is to ensure that if someone is going to progress through the business, that they're aligned to our cultural values. We don't want to have people in a leadership, because the issue is there, and we've I think most people who've worked in recruitment have seen this, is when you have someone in a management or leadership role that doesn't embody the values, that creates issues. That can create serious problems later on down the line. So we have a culture code score that people have to work towards, and the demands of that get higher. The higher you go up through the ranks, if you want to go to a management role, the expectations of that score are higher. And then we have a series of competency goals. We have actually recruitment-based goals, and then almost like growth goals, like professional growth goals, that they have to work towards to achieve each level. And they're not hugely complicated. If someone's starting in recruitment, it might be that, our training, I think for the first 3 levels, we've now added in things like adding 500 connections on LinkedIn that are within your market. If you're starting out in recruitment, get X number of terms of business in place, X number of client meetings, the things that they should be kind of doing anyway. But actually, if they focus on the process, then the byproduct should be that the billings fall into place.
Yeah.
But what we're and like, as someone wants to move to, let's say someone's a principal, wants to move into like a management role, then you need to have sat in X number of interviews, like internal interviews. You need to have mentored someone for 4 weeks. You need to have delivered a training subject and received feedback. Right, so these little things. So you're trying to build the skills that will allow someone to succeed in that role when they move into it. Not like you move into the job and then think, oh God, like I don't know how to do this. Like in theory, they should have already done some of the key parts that are actually required for that role. And again, like that's something that I see is like a really important part of L&D. Like that's nothing to do with, that's not training. That's aligning learning with the business strategy of where we want to go. Like I've just relaunched that ramp this year. I put a post up about this the other day, but it was like we've reduced the layers, we've compressed it, we've accelerated progression. Really positive things, like really well received. But there's some of the competency goals that are now linked to some of our strategic imperatives. So, for example, we know as a business we need to be winning more exclusive work and more retained work. Okay, we've done a lot of work behind the scenes to productize these solutions, something I know that you're a big fan of, and how we deliver on them. So we're ready to almost go, and I got to start the training as of Jan. But then, we're either then able to map expectations around selling some of those solutions into the career development framework. So it's kind of like I can't just go, oh, we're going to do this, and they don't do it. It's like, but if you're not, to begin with, we've actually just said we want to make sure that you've tried. That you've actually presented some of these solutions, because we're fairly confident that we'll win them once we present them with the stuff that we've built. But actually, in order to get promoted, they need to have demonstrated that they've done that. And like these are the things I think that in L&D that can get very much misunderstood by the business. HR in general, to be perfectly honest, the whole of HR is quite wildly misunderstood by many small businesses, because you hire HR quite often to begin with, it's like, oh God, we're going to end up in court if we don't do something. Whereas most HR people want to do things that are transformational to the organisation and help it grow, and well-being and cultural value add. But they get bogged down in some of the more maintenance stuff that they have to do. But yeah, that is how I sort of see learning and development, is aligning employee learning and development, like their competency development and the skills that they're developing, and being able to link that to the broader business strategy. But if an L&D person doesn't know the business strategy, and this is why they need the seats at the top table, this is why you need them close to the top of the business, they can't create that link. They can't. They're pitching in the dark.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
They can't transform things.
Yeah, I think that is a really good point, because I think sometimes certain roles, L&D included, aren't necessarily part of certain conversations, which then limits their ability to do their job effectively. So, I totally agree with that. What'd be interesting as well is, so your time in your current role, could you just talk about sort of challenges and learns over the period, and with the view that if anyone's listening at the moment who's looking to scale a business, or maybe doesn't have an L&D function, or someone who is in L&D and needs some advice, could you just talk a little bit about that to sort of give them some tips?
So I think some of the challenges for me personally, I want to link everything back to, I strive for alignment, right? It's really like I really want to achieve like organisational alignment, so everything makes sense from top to bottom. So for me, when I came into Capio, it's a 4-founder business, right? So that creates there are pros and there's cons to that. You can scale quite quickly, but then you've got it's just navigating stakeholders is somewhat a little bit more tricky. So things like the mission, I know I needed for me, I needed this because I couldn't create the vision, I couldn't create the values, I couldn't create the behavioural framework, I couldn't create anything until I had that in place. So, and it was really important that I understood it's not my business. Like, this needed to come from them, and that they felt passionate about it as well. So I had to something that I sat down and interviewed each of them, asked them like a series of questions: why they set up the business, what they love about Capio, like where they see it going, like all of these sorts of general questions. But there's like loads of like qualitative stuff, right? But then I had all the answers like pretty much written out, and then I deciphered their answers, created like a thematic review. So you kind of like pigeonhole their answers into certain themes, and then like what came out of that, and it was uniform across all of them, was that like there was two really standout things, and it was quality, and that the business was sort of created in service of others. In a way, like the business should be there to help other like people internally to progress their careers. We should be looking to help candidates progress their careers. It was all of this sorts of stuff. So then based on that, I was able to then present a mission, which was to create opportunities that help in building a better future. It may not have started at that. I think we refined it to that, but that's where we ended up. And then that created some buy into that. And then I could then go on and create the values. Like and a lot of people will talk about culture as being really, really important, because it is massively important. But if you want to grow your company, that if you're not deliberate about the way that you want to like manage your culture, then you're just going to end up with a mixed bag, right? You add more people to the pot, the culture just ends up being what it is. You can't be strategic about the way that you want it to almost manifest as people get added. So you have to have the vision, the mission, and the values in place. I sat down and interviewed every single person in the business when I first started, and asked them what the values were. Only the marketer knew what all of the values were, and I was like, right, okay, that presents an opportunity to do some work there. Everyone said supportive. Everyone across the whole, that was one of the values, but that was really cool. So everyone really enjoyed working with the company, overwhelmingly positive. But I just felt that as we add more people into the pot, you're going to miss that if you can't be really, really clear on those things. So we did like a mission to Mars project. You can Google this. It's quite a known exercise that you do, and you basically say, if we're going to replicate this business on another planet, Mars, who would you send? Which 4 people would you send? And that basically gave me an idea as to the people who were perceived as almost like values champions without being formally given the title. Do you know what I mean? And then we also sent out a survey with data about like selection about all these different values that people voted for, that they were important to them and that they thought best represented Capio. And then I worked with that group, and we went through all the data as a group, and then decided on which ones we thought were most appropriate. That gave us the values. But and I think this is more important than anything, because lots of people have values. What do they do with them? Put on a wall.
They stick them on their website, and then people forget about them, don't they?
And don't do anything with them. Don't do anything with them. So for me, the most important part then, it was then actually saying, right, how do we transfer this value into action? Like, what is the behavior that you need to see that means that someone is doing that? So we had dedicated, integrity, supportive, and humility over the values. What does that actually mean? What does that look like? So then that was the culture code. Was then we worked on, right, so dedicated, what does that actually mean? And it's like, going above and beyond the call of duty when you need to, like showing that you sort of care. And these are such simple things. I show this when we induct people, and I'm like, is there anything on here that you don't think you can do? It's not. It's very, very straightforward, like stuff. It is actually a lot more. Depends when the pressure's on. Sometimes these things do tend to go out the window, but that means that we can just be really, really clear on how we want people to kind of like behave and uphold those values. So I think if in terms of like growing a business, if you want to make culture like front and center to that, I would really put a case forward to saying like, have your values, but then like have clear behaviours that you want people to adopt as part of that, and then factor that in somewhere along the line to the way that they're either promoted or part of their reviews. We now review it quarterly. Everyone is going to get reviewed quarterly as part of their appraisals. You'll get a score. And there might just be like slight tweaks that we just need to make just so that we're creating alignment to the values and the mission.
Yeah, the culture and values thing is really interesting because I've worked at a few agencies in my career, and I've seen people, I've seen companies just do it so wildly different, and some of it was just non-existent. Really, it was literally like I remember we had a push on the values. It was like, I don't know, it was like flavor of the month sort of thing. I don't know what happened. They must have had a meeting and they were like, we haven't talked about values in 3 years. We should probably do this. So they had the big push and then it sort of got forgotten about. But I remember the COO pulled everyone on the sales floor and like the directors and everything into like a big circle sort of thing. And he was like, do you know what our values are? And nobody knew. And they were like, we've got like 5 core values, which we actually haven't even like looked at or reviewed in years. We actually couldn't tell you what they are, and nobody understood what they were. And we sort of realized that there was very little direction, and there was very little there wasn't like the 10 Commandments sort of thing that you revert back to in hard times. But with the values, you sort of touched on it there, but how do you, and I suppose how strict are you? Like when times are tough, it, like you said, it can be extremely easy just to be like, oh, we won't be as ethical at the moment because then we can push certain deals through because we need the revenue, that sort of thing. I know obviously a lot of companies fall on that sword, but how do you stick to your values in the harder times?
It's all driven from that framework, really. Like it feeds into everything. Probation passes, promotions, which are the big things that the guys are often aiming for and pushing for. Is those things? Is that it feeds back into those areas. There's certain decisions that we've made that you can stress test against them as well. Like particularly the mission. Like there's decisions that we've made this year that I think far put us. They're really advanced for where we are. So as a small business, like supportive is one of our values, right? That's and that was I said that was the one that came up more so than anything when I first interviewed them. They were like, I don't really know, maybe supportive, like most of like that. So it was one of the values. So things that we've like looked at this year is I had a conversation with our girls off the back of International Women's Day and just said, like, be really candid and honest with me here. What do we do well? What don't we do that well at? And what do we genuinely suck at? And like, I had some really good, really helpful feedback on that. There was lots of good stuff. They actually talked about the way that our values were very inclusive. Like, and it wasn't that they weren't like male dominated values around like competition and all of these sorts of things, right? So that was positive, but they said your like benefits and incentives tend to still be too weighted towards the guys. And it was like, right, great, let's work on that. One of the things around benefits was like, we didn't think, like, we as a group of leaders, we were like, well, we've got quite a young workforce. We don't really see that. Is private healthcare really that important? Massively, massively important, by the way. So, and that came back on the feedback. They were like, you don't understand how helpful that would be for us to be able to just see a doctor, because at the moment, the NHS is where it is, and that's not easy. So that was feedback that we've got. We've been able to do some stuff behind the scenes on some of our HR bits and made a few cuts here and there to then be able to deliver that, which we then rolled out last month. What was the like octopus like benefits, the octopus money coaching? It was
right.
Like, I saw this as a really, really clear link. Like, creating opportunities to help in building a better future. It was about providing free financial coaching to our guys, I don't want people coming into work necessarily stressing about money because it's difficult, because I think they'll focus on the wrong thing. So why not provide a benefit which can give them advice and guidance on how to be more financially stable? And like that's an enhanced, so we subsidize it at lead consultant, which is basically one up from, for us, it's one up from recruiter. And then that becomes, they get unlimited access. And these are the things. So it's about backing it up. Like once you've made that decision, like back it up and link it back. We've done it because of this. Like that was the other thing that came up about conversation with our girls. I'm super proud of this, but like they just said, we've got 5 directors, including me, 4 founders, and I'm another director, all male, similar age, white, right? I can't change that overnight. We can't do that, right? I think we have to work harder. Because of it, we have to work harder. So I don't want that to just be a cheap shot that someone can just hit us with. It's like, because actually we do quite a lot to try to, we're doing what we can. Albeit, I dare say that there are other people that say you could do more, but as far as we're aware right now, we're trying to remove the barriers. So like something that came back on the conversation with the girls was the fact that our policies around maternity and paternity are going to, maternity for them was going to pose real challenges in terms of getting women into leadership roles. Because at some point in time, you've got this, and the recruitment industry is really crap at this, but at the point in time that someone is generally getting very good at recruitment, they're probably around about 27, 28, like usually, 3-4 years in or whatever. That can coincide with the same time that if it was a female, but it would potentially be looking to start thinking about families. So then you don't put in place a provision which is going to support them to the extent that they're potentially then going to leave the industry or look elsewhere or whatever. And it just didn't sit right with me. So we've created an incredibly robust, family-friendly policy, and it goes way beyond just simply mat and pat leave. Like there are provisions in there that are really well thought out for in the event that really bad stuff happens over the course of someone's pregnancy. And it's like we've really gone about to think in that situation, what would we want, what would be the right thing to do. And again, it was, it's then bringing that back. So because we're supportive, because we wanted to stand by this value, that we were supportive, and equally it ties in with our mission. It's the right thing. It's the right thing for us to do. So they're not easy decisions. It is really easy to stand by your values when things are going well. When things are tough, or when do you stand by them when it involves you putting your hand in your pocket? That's what I think we've done. That's what I feel we have done really, really well this year.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, and something you just mentioned then as well. Diversity and inclusion is obviously what everyone talks about the last few years. It's a really, really big topic. How do you feel like, it doesn't necessarily have to be specific to recruitment agencies, but what's your opinion and views, and you might have learned something interesting as well around how you actually go about building diverse teams, regardless of what type of company you're in or what industry you're in?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's very difficult to just quickly change these things. I think it's about understanding the barriers that you have within the workplace. There's so much more that we can do with that. Don't get me wrong. I am not. I think it would be a miss for me to sit here and say that I'm an expert in this. The one area that, as I say, I knew that was going to pose some issues was around women into leadership roles within our business, and being a parent myself and not getting pat leave at the particular time. Like the thing is, things like paternity leave is that's not just about the bloke. That's that's actually a really important thing to give that will help the mother. That particular, and these things get gets sometimes overlooked. So actually, it was just in that particular area we just focused on really thinking about what are the barriers. Let's see if we can remove them, to ensure that we're not losing great talent in our business that we want at the top table. Like we want, because when they're there, we know that like there is a concern that at 4 or 5 directors you could get all male, you could get an element of groupthink, and there's things that we've done as well. Like when we've had strategy days, we've rolled that out and had like lower levels. Lower level. We've had like senior leads in. The managers come into it and stuff like that. But where we've had female senior leads, they've come in, which has helped, because otherwise we're not thinking about we're not necessarily thinking about the broader audience. Do you know what I mean? So like, if you're making decisions for the bigger, just bear in mind those things. Like if you can bring other people into the meeting that are going to give diverse thought, I think that's the key, right? Diverse thought. You can't just achieve diversity, but you can potentially within your business, where you can try to draw in some diverse thought and opinion so that you get a better shaped sort of strategy and solution, so to speak.
Yeah, with diversity and inclusion as well, right? So I can't remember if I heard this on a podcast, if I was speaking to someone, I really can't. But I remember someone talking about it, and they were saying how a lot of people think about diversity and inclusion in that it's just like different races. Yeah, a lot of people think of it as simple as that. If you look at the conversations around, even in sport, like the Premier League, for example, I think they've got a rule where you have to interview X amount ratio of black managers, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and it's very forced. And there's pros and cons to that approach. There doesn't seem to be. No one's got the answer, whether it's recruitment, NBA, Premier League,
it's
whatever.
so complex.
It is. But also, someone mentioned to me, or whatever I was listening to, it was like an extra layer. It was like it doesn't necessarily need to be about race or skin color or religion. It could also be like their background. So if you've got loads of upper class people who grew up in upper class families, and then having a different perspective and different thought process for someone who's maybe from a different part of the country, so South England to North England, it could be like their upbringing, it could be the university they went to, but like you said, just don't you think it's like so important to have a mixture of different thought processes and values and cultures and that sort of thing as well, just beyond obviously the race and skin color?
Yeah, and I guess again, that comes to, and that feeds into your hiring process, right? That's one of the most that's key. That's going to be a key driver of that. So the way that you interview, and again, it comes if you've got the values in place, your non-negotiables, your values, these sorts of things, then you can interview based on those things. So we've got some competency-based questions or certain questions, and we're trying to tick the value for it. And I really like it when I interview. I think quite often with recruiters, I find there's when they're sort of joining, there's something that is really driving them, and that doesn't and they can come from a diverse background. They really can, in that, because I know that I've had you can interview someone who's perhaps come from a very much a less privileged background and had to graft, had to work hard, wants to strive and achieve something, pay back the investment that their parents paid into them. Quite often it's a single parent, to be quite honest, that paid into them, and that's their drive. And you can see that is a really, really healthy, right? That's a good motivator. But then I've also had people who've done really, really well that have come from very good backgrounds and equally want to stand on their own 2 feet and show that they can do it themselves and don't want to perhaps lean. And it's just like they definitely. And I really like understanding those drivers. Like when I'm interviewing, what is the bit that's actually going to make you tick? But they all score on. They would all go through on values rather than. I guess what you're. It's making sure that you've got the right criteria when you come to selecting your candidates, I guess.
Yeah, Yeah, I find it a really interesting topic, just because, like I said, there isn't like it's one of those things where it's very work in progress, like globally, and it doesn't matter if it's Goldman Sachs, or if it's a little recruitment agency, or if it's a sporting league. Everyone's always like, there's always this constant conversation of, like, how do we build diverse teams? Because we know diverse teams, not only does it help you scale, because a lot of companies, I think, they get stuck in that um they get stuck in that situation where they set up let's do recruitment. So they set up a recruitment company. They hire, 6-7 people who they knew as well before. And they all happen to be white males in their late 20s, early 30s, right? They just happen to be. They're not like doing that out on purpose, but that's just who their group is. And then when someone who's of a different race or different gender or a different background or whatever comes in and interviews, and they look around and see 9 white males, and they're a black female, let's say, right? Naturally, if they're interviewing it somewhere else where it is a bit more diverse, they're going to go there.
Yeah.
So the diverse company keeps sweeping up all the building a diverse team and attracting different different metrics, but the company who is like actually actively trying to be more diverse isn't able to actually attract the talent, and then it's sort of like a vicious cycle, isn't it?
It is, and you get that even just really, you'd have seen this just in more simple terms. Just actually, when you get it's the balance of males to females on a team. Like, you go past a point of no return. Like, I worked in a business before. We had an engineering division. It was like, this is so hard now because of the nature of the sector that they're recruiting in is very, very male dominated, and the guys that we had on the team, it was like, I don't even know who we could get to sit on this team. Well, it wasn't a hugely successful team, probably for that for that reason. But yeah, it is difficult to turn the tide with it. And like, I could interview, because I like to think, I don't. Well, unconscious bias is unconscious bias. Have you ever read Blink by Malcolm Gladwell?
No, I haven't read it. No, I think the only book I've read by him is Outliers.
Outliers. I loved Outliers. Great book. But Blink is also very good, and it's just some really interesting stuff around unconscious bias that you just never think of, and different experiments that have been done that you can't get away from it. You can be aware. It's very, very difficult to get to, because there's just they're in you. Like, it's very difficult. That's the way that you've been made up by various different experiences over the course of your life. So it is. I don't know what this is. As I say, you can try to remove the barriers, and try as hard as you can to make sure that your business is as inclusive as possible. But yeah, I'm sorry, mate, I've got a bit stuck because I don't know.
No, it's a hard one. This is why I asked the question, because I'm yet to speak to anyone who has the answer. And what I found interesting was one of my friends was interviewing for I think he was trying to get into internal recruitment, and he kept on getting asked, like, how are we going to build a diverse team? And there wasn't really a proper answer to it. It was just sort of like they were almost asking from the perspective of, we've tried and we don't know how to do it, and we spoke to people and we don't know how to do it. So can you help? So I think it's a really interesting
feedback. Really important. As I said, like, there was stuff there that I didn't think about. Just like when we did International Women's Day, that we hadn't really thought of, and it was like silly things that we like. There was a 5-a-side football competition going on at the same time. We sent the lads off. The guys went off and played football, finished up for the day. The girls went for lunch on International Women's Day and came back to the business. It was like, that's not right. Like, we got that wrong. We got that wrong. We got that message wrong. And they were really thought. And I was really glad I had the meeting with them, because I asked for feedback and they didn't hold back. And we've made changes off the back of it. So I think, a big, the concept of like psychological safety within a business, like you encourage feedback. You try to make yourself vulnerable to the extent that like people are, you admit your shortcomings and your failures and these sorts of things, just to be open and honest. And I think we do that well. So therefore we are able to get some decent feedback for us to be able to then necessarily make the changes. If you just, if it's my way or the highway, you're beating the drum, you're trying to very autocratic leadership, people are just giving you lip service. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Like you can't be getting it slows down learning, slows down team learning. Organizations can't change. You see this time and time again where businesses have got like really autocratic ways of managing, and I just don't believe it works in today's in today's society, like in today's competitive world. Like you have to be able to, navigate what is a really tricky landscape, business-wide, and do it quite quickly and make changes. And, like the faster you can learn as a business, the quicker you can adapt to changes. So if people are scared of giving feedback, it's going to slow down that cycle.
Yeah, I think it's mad as well. Like creating a culture where people are scared to give you honest feedback. Like the only way you can get honest feedback is there's anonymous polls you can do. You can get like
we just done one. We've just done some.
Yeah. But I've worked in companies where people are still scared because they're like, they're probably tracking it though. Like, how, if your culture has really got to the point where people are scared of submitting anonymous feedback, like maybe you need to reassess things.
It is quite genuinely one of my biggest worries if I've ever spoken to if I speak to a consultant and they've got an issue that they're too worried to go to their manager with. I have huge concerns if that's the case, because I'm like, I just want why you should be able to just talk to your manager about these things, and if they aren't, that is a failing on the manager's part. Like because they're not encouraging enough feedback in there. They don't always have to accept it. It's not to say that it's always right, but at least where the person's head is at, and you can get there and you can get in to try to resolve it. But yeah, it's always one of my biggest concerns is if a manager basically rules through fear.
Yeah, my way's the best way, and if you don't like it, off you go, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, just to sort of close this off, mate. So what I'd be really interested in getting your opinion of is, where do you feel like recruitment is going? And it doesn't just have to be recruitment agencies, but we're in a situation now where like we're going through like another technological boom. It seems like the biggest one since the internet, really, in that AI is at the forefront of everyone's mind. It's on the tip of everyone's tongue, and we're seeing the baby steps. Like I think it's sort of like the Pong version of video games, and then in 10 years, 20 years, it's going to be Xbox 360 sort of thing. Probably even a bigger jump, to be honest with you. And that's it's obviously going to affect businesses, and people are already utilizing ChatGPT, which, to be honest with you, I think is going to be actually considered quite basic in 5 years. But like, where do you see recruitment going?
I don't know. I think when it comes to the AI side, it's quite difficult to know, because I don't think any of us know quite where it's going. I listen to Mo Gaudat talk quite a bit, and it scares the living daylights out of me. But even he's like, I don't really know where it's going, because no one really knows, because it's doing stuff that they don't really understand. Do you know what? When I think back, though, just in terms of like recruitment and stuff, when I think back to even like years ago, like when I was doing recruitment and just what I've seen consistently work, like what I've seen work over time, I don't think a lot of that has changed. So there's just loads more noise. When you really think about what the targets were 10 years ago of what you were looking to get, generally what most recruitment businesses were looking to get their consultants to bill, has that changed in 10 years? Like the average? Because generally, 10 years ago, a lot was like, well, we can get this business to a point in time where everyone's billing 10 grand a month.
Yeah.
It's not really that different. It's not really that different, is it? So all of the stuff that's come in, all the noise, all the technological advancement. I'm not saying that they're not great, because people who can utilize them, when you can utilize them, amazing.
Yeah.
But is it really driven? Is it really driven the performance of the industry? I'm not saying that. I guess more of a bit of a question. I'm not totally sold on it. Like, you've got incredible products out there that do wonderful things, but half the time you're battling to get a consultant just to advertise their job.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, can you pop them into a sequence which is going to be multi-channeled and do all of this wonderful thing? It's like, can you just clean your inbox? like there's some real basic things that I think sometimes talk about the window. Like, when you look at the key things that people needed to be successful in recruitment 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever: work ethic, intrinsically motivated, driven by quality, want to build relationships, be curious, keep learning. That's no different. That's the tactics are different, and you can definitely use different approaches now to where you can get creative. I think, I really believe in personal branding from a recruitment perspective. Like, I think there is a lot of noise, and it is a way for you to cut through it just by building a reputation, a brand, so that when you do your outreach, you've got some credibility. They've seen you. I think you're more likely to convert that lead. I started a project with. I'm going to go off a tangent again. Is that okay? But I started,
yeah, go on.
So we've done a personal branding boot camp for 8 weeks. We paid for that. It was good, but I don't feel the guys didn't quite get to where I wanted them to with it in terms of converting into revenue. So I was like, right, I'm going to work with 2 of you for 10 weeks, 1-to-1, and I will help you craft content. You just, as long as you can do it, you have to do what I say you're going to do, like what I ask you to do. Sorry. With it, I sat with them both for 45 minutes last week. We created 3 posts. I said, we're just going to go heavy on valuable. We're going to give away content to your audience that I think is valuable, because I think that is the way to go. Not personal. I don't think that's what's going to drive you like leads, like good quality leads. Create a poll, 2 valuable posts, both picked up clients just off the first week. I was like, it's
Really?
not that. It's, honestly, guys, it meets both. Well, yeah. What inbound lead, account exec? We've got a job opportunity. Could you help us with it? The other consultant has just booked a meeting in yesterday or the day before off of those leads. That was the first week. I was like, I know what you can do with this if you get the right content, get the right audience in the room, align your contacts and your connections so that it's your right target audience, and then we're going to drop valuable content into it, and they started to pick up leads from it. So I think that is a really so like moving forwards, and you're seeing this more and more with consultants. I do think that's something that's going to become more popular and prevalent within recruitment. I think I do think LinkedIn is really driving the standards of the industry, just because of people who are really seen in with it. Yourself, Ben Browning, certain people who are putting really good content onto the sort of onto LinkedIn, which is just making people like up there, like the way that they pitch it. Recruitment's really quite far behind with it. Wouldn't you agree? Like the way that we actually sell when you look at the tech industry.
What in terms of the way we sell, or what we sell, like in terms of the product, or both?
Kind of both. Like actually having a process that isn't just, I'm going to spec a CV and pick up a job and work it, and it's.
Yeah, I think recruitment is constantly about 5 years behind tech sales. To be honest, like just in the way we do things, I don't know why it is. I really don't. I think generally, like, training across the board in recruitment is quite narrow-minded, and it's not a holistic approach. And for some reason as well, like, if you speak to someone in tech sales, they have this culture of, personal development. You've got loads of sales trainers and tech sales. People with email sequences and technology and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you go into recruitment, and there isn't really that type of culture in recruitment. It's like you said, it's very much like, well, just spec in a candidate, because we don't even have a product to sell anyway. The product is the candidates, really. Like how you speak to, because of what I do, mostly I speak to agencies, and one of the first questions I say is, if a prospect asked you, what can you offer us apart from good candidates, how would you answer that? And the answers I always get are, they start talking about their experience for some reason. They talk about the amount of candidates on their database.
Specialist.
Yeah. Specialist, expert in my market, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And then they might say something like, we'll create your job descriptions, or we'll give you a salary survey. That's about the extent of it. But yeah, it is interesting, and personal branding as well. Isn't there a stat? I don't know if it's true, but there's a stat that always goes around that like only 1% of people on LinkedIn actually post content.
Yes, you have lurkers. It's like there's lurkers who are just the people who scroll and don't do anything. Contributors, the people who comment, and then the creators. And the creators, there's only I think it's like 99% of the content is produced by 1% of the audience, or 1% of its or something like that. It's mad. Like I am not the person who typically would. I don't like social media. Like I'm not. It is so far out of my comfort zone. Doing this, it's taken a long time for me to get comfortable with doing it. It's fine now, and you do actually have to build quite a lot of resilience. I underestimated the resilience you need with it. You need to literally not give a shit if your post doesn't do well. Like, just don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. Someone saw it. It's okay. Just crack on to do something else. Like, it doesn't matter. But so many people get like, oh, you only got 4 likes. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
Don't care. Don't care. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just do something else. Like, you've got to build up some resilience with it.
Yeah, because you did training with Hoxo, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did training with Hoxo as well. And I remember when we did it, and I was like, everyone in our business didn't really run with it. They sort of did a couple of posts and then sort of, binned it off, because I think the reality is most people get really scared of posting, because LinkedIn's a weird one. It's not like Twitter, it's not your personal account, etc. You're very vulnerable, and obviously everyone has that fear of even losing clients, getting fired, all that kind of stuff. But I remember one of my team, because I was getting results. I was getting results on LinkedIn. I went from like not posting at all, but really wanting to posting very often, and obviously I post every day now. But I was initially nervous as well. Like, even though I'd had success on other social media platforms, LinkedIn was just such a different thing for me. And I remember sitting with my team, some of my team members, and I was saying, I was like, we're going to have a big push on personal branding. You'd be really good at it. You just need to get into the flow. Once you get into the flow and you build that resilience, it won't be a problem anymore. And I remember she worked on, it was like 9:00. And I was like, cool, if we can just get a post out by, 9:30 sort of thing, do it now, and then we can get it out and go from there. And I remember it got to like 11:15, and I was like, I can't see your post on my feed. Like, I don't know what's happened there. And I was like, have you done it yet? And she was like, oh no, I'm still writing it. It wasn't a long post, but what had happened was she was so scared of like, not get. I remember having a conversation with her, and I was just like, what's causing the delay, sort of thing. And she was like, well, what if it only gets like 500 impressions? So
it's just we've all been there. I think we've all been there.
It is a weird one.
To do stuff like when you first started. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. With what you post as well, like, have you had many like trolls or haters or people who like publicly disagree with you?
No, I had one recently. I scheduled it, and I was actually in Lap with my kid, with my family, and it was about BD, and it was just this. I said, this rubbish question gets far too much airtime, and it was like I think it was, do you have any vacancies, or do you use agencies? That's like by far and away got 45,000 impressions, which is like, for me, I only started this year with 1,800 connections. I've got nearly 5,000 followers now because I've been quite consistent at doing it. But I didn't really commit to this at all, like prior to doing the Hoxo thing. So there was quite a lot there, and I had people saying like, "Your view on this is wonky," and like, there's some really good people. I'm like, these guys really know what they're talking. They do know what they're talking about. And there's some good stuff on there. I haven't had any real haters, but that post I was like, "Oh, this is a bit too much now. I don't like it. It's too many. I don't like it. It's almost to the extent I'm uncomfortable with." They had like 200 likes. I'm more comfortable around about 30. But so it is. I saw it nothing other than I basically just looked at it as an experiment. That was it.
Yeah.
I was just like, I just want to see if this works. Can it do anything? I generated placements off the back of it for us internally. So I was like, I can see that it works. But then that's why I've thrown myself into working with the guys, because I was like, do you know what? If I was to go back in and do recruitment, I was fairly certain that this would be a very, very key part of how I did it. I'm going to almost experiment by helping, just working with them on their content and seeing what they can produce. I'm going to do it for 10 weeks and see what happens, but I'm almost certain I will generate some good stuff off the back of it because I believe in it that much.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, look, mate, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a really great chat. If people want to check your stuff out, is it just LinkedIn they need to go to?
Yeah, mainly, yeah. Just reach out on LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation, or if anyone wants any tips on anything, happy to have a chat.
Yeah, and if they're looking for a new recruitment job as well and like the sound of what you're doing, do they just come to you as well, or do they go to Capio's website? Or
no, they can. Yeah, they can come to us. We're on a bit of a consolidation thing at the moment, just over the next few months. But I'm sure we'll be looking to. But if they're, you can always find room for very good recruiters. So yeah,
Chris will stick you on the waiting list.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, legend, mate. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Good chat.